here with Eddie Sotto, who, if you're familiar with Euro Disneyland, Disneyland Paris, was the producer in charge of Main Street and as well the hotel, right? The Disneyland Hotel as well?
Well, I began the hotel, started on the hotel, and then the architects kind of took over. So, but that was a contribution I was responsible for.
Yeah, and Imagineers didn't usually work on the hotels, right? Is that correct? You guys worked more on the hotel than usual?
That's true. Disney Development Company did the hotels, and in this case, they also worked on the hotels. Dana Aiken was the architect of the hotel, but the concept of the hotel actually grew out of Main Street. So it's a little bit different than the typical path Disney takes, because no one had ever done a hotel that looked into the park quite the way this one does, or was part of the thematic experience.
Yeah, now it's become such a staple. Obviously, they did the Grand Californian, Hotel Miracosta in Tokyo Disney Sea, and now we've seen that Disneyland Forward plan where they want to essentially take existing hotels and wrap the parks around them now to accomplish what Disneyland Paris did 30 years ago. But yeah.
Well, a good idea catches on. I think, despite the financial problems Euro Disney had in its initial opening years, the one hotel that did super well and was always at a very high occupancy was the Disneyland Hotel. The one that looks in the park is the one they wanted. Some of the outlying high capacity hotels, like the Newport, were pretty much empty.
Yeah. And they didn't want to build a hotel at the entrance, right? Like they didn't think people wanted that.
Well, it's kind of funny. So the story, here's the story as I experienced it was, we had a certain amount of budget and obligation to protect people from the weather. The company was very worried. They were doing Paris because the numbers, the cross-European traffic, everything made sense for this location except the weather. Now, Tokyo's pretty inclement too, but that was a big issue. So they promised, they said, well, look, we're going to do some weatherizing. So one of the big things that happened was when people, prior to the internet being big, needed to go stand in line and buy a ticket, are they going to be standing there in the pouring rain in some hour line like you would in Anaheim or perhaps in Florida in the rain and pouring freezing cold, right? No. Yeah. So our team sketched out how big a rain cover would have to be to envelop those crowds. So when we did that, it came in at like $80 million or some. Of course, if you theme it, Eddie Sotto style, it's going to be crazy, right? Yeah. So it's expensive. So we couldn't even present it. It's like, well, this is going to be stupid. We'll get laughed out of the room if we walk in with an $80 million weather roof, right? So one thought I had was, well, what if you put some suites, kind of like Club 33 in Disneyland, like an upper level with beautiful suites up there. It wouldn't take much. And then you could sell those and would pencil. The roof would pay for itself. Yeah. Well, that idea of having suites, and Nina Ray Vaughn, who was on our team, did a very nice painting that shows maybe one or two stories. It wasn't that aggressive. Yeah. And that was the initial start of it. Marty Sklar mentioned, hey, what about the Grand Mackinac Island Hotel that's there in Grand Mackinac? What's something American looking as an entrance where people could buy their ticket under the hotel or these suites? But immediately Gary Wilson, of course, who came from Marriott, who was on the Disney board, he loved the idea. He's like, I know, we'll make it gigantic. We'll put 5 stories. So that scared me to death. I'm like, now you're killing my toy train and the rest of the little Main Street's going to look dinky. Yeah. So immediately from Imagineering point of view, I think I did the very first elevation of it as a high. It's online on my Twitter account. The first elevations of that hotel, I actually have the drawings of it, the original elevations of that hotel as a multi-story building. Yeah. Because Tony and I agreed that scale is everything. So we'd have to make the windows appear to look smaller. The thing would have to have forced perspective, kind of like the castle in reverse. We really wanted to pull those tricks out if, in fact, the company wanted to go that way. So that's how Imagineering was so involved in it. And then Dana Aiken, became an Imagineer, Disney Development. He became kind of the main architect for that hotel. And we worked together. I mean, everyone collaborated because it was between two worlds, but I was sort of responsible for the ticketing complex underneath and helped drive the design, although the hotel was involved too. So I don't think anyone's really talked too much about that. So that might be a new 1992 story. And of course, the color, hugely controversial. Even the clock, that Mickey clock, hugely controversial. I remember, well, are we going to have Roman numerals or numbers? Is it going to be the watch Mickey Mouse or that Mickey Mouse? I remember seeing in the Orsay Museum this train station, ironically, XX train station in Paris, the most beautiful interior wall clock, and every number was surrounded in a circular frame. I go, now that is how we bring the Frenchness to this without it literally being French. So, do a couple quick sketches and say, well, what if it was like this? And then we went to town with that Mickey. Even the positioning of the hands, his fingers, even the color of the glass couldn't be yellow, had to be just off-white so it felt rich and not like plastic. And you wouldn't believe, even the hotel goes through these things, the naming conventions, the sign. What's going to be on the railroad station? Is it going to say Main Street USA or Disneyland Paris? Well, we just said Disneyland, or excuse me, Euro Disney. We just said that on the front of the hotel. So all these things, I guess my point is they're all intertwined arguments. They all mean something because to a guest, you're in a sequence of events.
But that's where the legend and lore of Walt Disney Imagineering begins for people, right? They hear a story like this and it's, wow, they do care about those little details, and those little details matter, and that's the Disney difference, right? That's why we come to expect a level of detail from every Disney project that's like that, right?
It's so true. And for example, so much of it is like a movie. John Hench was the one who said, well, you have the close up and the long shot. The long shot, like looking at the castle, establishes the desire, but the close up has to reinforce it or get better and better and better. So one of the concerns we had, I just love that you mentioned hotel, because thank goodness it's something we haven't talked about much. So when you go in to buy your ticket, we were even thinking about what is the guest seeing? How much are we giving away when you're buying your ticket? Well, now operations demanded 3 portals for the railroad station. Not 2 like Disneyland or on the left or the right or Florida, 1 in the middle.
So no Mickey.
Now, what is the impact? Now, you were standing there. What would you see if you looked through that middle portal?
The castle.
Right. I thought that was Tony and I agreed, worst idea in the world to give away the castle all the way before you buy your ticket. I'm sorry, that has to be a reveal. That's a reveal from leaving the real world and going to the Disney reality.
That gets rid of the Mickey floral too, does it not? At that point, you have to think about where to put that. Right?
Well, the Mickey floral, of course, is above the in between and above the portals there. And we didn't do it quite the same way. We have that homage to It's a Small World, if you will, the facade there that has a band organ, and we did a few things differently because there's a cocktail bar looking right at the railroad station the whole time, and we weren't allowed to do a tall railroad station. Nothing iconic, because the hotel, it would block your view into the park. So now the railroad station takes a different role as a secondary player in this. The railroad station is a secondary element, almost a picture frame versus being the icon to the castle. So we put a bandstand. People say, oh, you just did this because that was, the early Disneyland idea was having a bandstand in town square. I said, no, the bandstand is to block the castle. So you're really not going to be magnetically drawn to it until Main Street establishes itself. And you come in, you hear the music, you look around, and town square has an opportunity to establish itself as an environment. Then once you get into the bandstand or go around it, oh my goodness, look at that, honey. Look, off on the horizon, it's the castle. I mean, we have to unfold these things. You can't just, you don't want to give it all away in the opening moment or even before you get in, right? So the hotel and Main Street play a unique dance together, Yeah.
If we can jump backwards for a moment, I want to talk about the development of the project. How did you get involved? This was your first project with WDI, right? Was Euro Disney?
Yeah.
And where were you? You were working on. You had worked on Knott's Berry Farm and Universal and Six Flags. You'd worked at previously.
Right. Well, I had worked for a company called Landmark Entertainment Group, which was run by some ex-Imagineers who probably more than anything wanted to compete with or do things as, Disney quality at less than Disney priceless.
Yeah.
And they were, out there working for Universal and for Six Flags and so forth. And so I was at Knott's and had designed an attraction or two at Knott's, and then was hired away to Landmark, who was doing a Verne location-based entertainment center, which is like, a theme park without being a theme park, in Baltimore, Maryland, called the Power Plant.
Mm-hmm.
And Jules Verne just happened to be, 20,000 Leagues, that whole, what we now call steampunk, was probably Tony Baxter's favorite design style. And of course, he had proposed a land called Discovery Bay years earlier that was very Jules Verne. So I kind of made the calculated little decision, being a kid who always wanted to be an Imagineer, of sneaking photos, because we had done a Jules Verne submarine in this project.
Yeah.
I was doing a mad scientist laboratory that all was 19th century. So I was like, funneling through someone you would know as Bruce Gordon, who was assisting Tony, all these images. So by the time that Disneyland Paris was starting to look for talent, I have to credit Tony for this. He's like, instead of going inside, he goes, let's get this Eddie Sotto guy to do this. But I thought I was going to get Discoveryland because, right? Jules Verne,
It seemed like the setup, yeah. And then now you're like,
I
nope,
thought it
Main
was the
Street.
setup, but Tim Delaney was coming off the hit of the Living Seas Pavilion. He was the superstar, of course, and he got that land and deserved it, obviously, and so that became his thing. So they give me Main Street, and I thought, why would he hire me to preside over a photocopier to do another copy of Florida or Tokyo? And it's because Tony Baxter doesn't photocopy pretty much anything. Tony Baxter wants to reimagine almost anything. Yeah. So I guess that's what was in store. And between he and I, we felt Main Street wasn't relevant to Europeans. I mean, they don't dream of being in small town America. Yeah. They live in the things we ripped off from them and made small towns from, which is Europe, which is all quaint villages. And so we thought, well, what if we could rotate the clock forward to the jazz era, something that Europe was more interested in and envious of, and so that's kind of how we developed the 1920s. But that got to be so overblown and so amazing. Like many things, it didn't happen. Michael Eisner said, well, let's go back to the formula. Yeah. Let's stick with our formula. It was a convenient way out of getting away from building a 19th century people mover down the street and a few other things. We were doing an elevated train and a Circle Vision theater. I didn't want to do a street. I want to do a land. Yeah. I didn't come to Imagineering to build a copy of the Emporium. I mean, that's considered inhuman torture, frankly, if you had to just replicate, So
you were given a land that essentially, other than the railroad and the Main Street vehicles, doesn't really have an attraction.
No. Yeah. Oh, I was so depressed. I was really depressed by that. And I'm like, so I get to put one more Coca-Cola chandelier in here. I mean, what are we doing in this land? Now, the trains, I'm a huge rail fan. So the honor of elevating and really taking the railroad itself to a historic high and really using American locomotives that no one had really ever tried to replicate before from the Civil War period, and really trying to make it something that would blow a European rail fan away. And to me, the whole park is the biggest cultural export from North America that's ever been made to Europe. The Statue of Liberty arrives from France, but what was given back? There's nothing physical that was ever given to Europe like that, other than tanks, So, I mean, how do you do something different than Elvis over there, So Main Street to be this cultural statement that's not political. Cultural, it's about baseball, it's about design, it's about all these American things we do that provide a richness. And so to me, that would go, no, that I can find something to like about that. So the Liberty Arcades and all those things, kind of became richer. And by the way, that's what the audience wants. They want richness. They go to museums on weekends,
Yeah. So you talked about the weather before. So when you started on this Main Street, were they talking about something like World Bazaar? So World Bazaar in Tokyo, they put the roof over the street. There's a lot of reasons why World Bazaar doesn't really work because of that. But How long was that part of the plan, and how did you decide we're not going to do that? Let's do something else instead.
You know, to Tony, building the World Bazaar roof, the best day that ever had was in the Herbie Ryman painting. I mean, it's a sonic disaster. I had the Tokyo portfolio when I was in Imagineering, so I actually worked on, certain 2.0s to World Bazaar. I mean, so I'm pretty familiar with it. And we didn't have any love for it, but that was what was in the plan. That was the instant, that was the photocopier formulaic thing to do. And Tony, I think, couldn't stand it so much. And Michael Eisner, people don't give him enough credit. Michael Eisner has a very great creative instinct and human instinct. And Michael could understand from the architectural point of view that just wouldn't be something Europeans would love.
Yeah.
So it kind of came down to this idea that when I think Michael talked to Robert Stern, and Robert Stern, the architect, New York architect, convinced Michael that the shared experience of people walking down that main street is sacred and you cannot mess it up. So I also give Stern some credit. And so, well, we have to have another weather solution. And I don't know exactly where it came from, but I was given some research for the Burlington Arcade, which exists in London. But guess what? There's a copy in Pasadena, California. Somebody copied it. I feel like Roy E. Disney, or was possibly an investor in that or knew something about it. But through the grapevine, these pictures came on my desk and we started talking about these arcades and what you could do with them. And I feel like Michael wanted that on a rainy day to be just as good a shared experience than Main Street would be on a sunny day. But then he did not want people going down the arcades when it's beautiful.
Yeah.
He wanted to be able to lock it. We had to add doors late in the project. He became worried that people would enjoy them too much. We needed to be able to close them and force people down the main street. So that's how good he was believing the arcades would be.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting.
Yeah, not only that, the arcades then sort of branch off into more, especially on the left side of the park, you can essentially almost get to the back of the park under an awning between Main Street, Frontierland, Adventureland.
You're very perceptive here. So if you could basically come from the ticketing complex, undercover left or right, under pretty tall glass awnings, to the left and right portal, go through those portals, and then there's a secondary walk. We had to cheat the facades to disguise it. But there's a way of, and that's why all Town Square is not copied from Florida, because of the weatherization. That gave me a reason to redesign and everything and change it, is that you're actually walking undercover in front of the City Hall, the Storybook Store, the restrooms there, and on the other side, you're going through the trolley barn and the hat shop and everything else. All the way, the only place you walk in the rain is just going across the street to the arcade and then continuing all the way to Discoveryland or Frontierland.
Yeah.
And then you're on the boardwalks of Frontierland. I mean, the park is amazing from a weather perspective. You can do most of the park undercover. Yeah. And they don't advertise that, but it's really a great feature.
Well, I mean, it's an amazing park, I think, for a lot of reasons. I think, obviously, it's gotten a bad reputation over the years due to the financial problems. But I think as the internet has blossomed, I think the Disney fandom, it's been nice to see everyone introduced to just how great that park is. It's this art piece. And, people come to me and they ask about going to different parks in the world. And they're like, well, what are the things I have to do in Hong Kong? What are the things I have to do in Tokyo? And usually it's like a list of attractions there. And in Paris, the list is very short. It's like, well, Phantom Manor's unbelievable. Pirates is unbelievable. Big Thunder's unbelievable. Space. But then the thing I always say, like with the list of attractions, I then say interiors. Go into every building, because the interiors, whether it's Main Street especially, but then throughout the park, you guys just were able to do the most lavish, insanely detailed interiors maybe of any Disney park in the world other than Disney Sea. Disney Sea and Disneyland Paris are very similar, I think, in their level of detail, especially interior spaces. But I love, like, my favorite thing in that park is to do 2 or 3 rides and just walk through interiors and just look at everything you threw in there. So obviously there's a very different philosophy coming into designing this park than all that had come before. And in some cases, a lot of what came after. Where does that come from? Where in the process of designing the park was it known that, okay, we're going to go wild on these interiors?
Well, I don't know that it was a conscious thing to say we're going to go wild. We wanted to,
Yeah.
Disneyland Paris is a park designed by fans for fans. I mean, I'm a Disney fan.
Yeah.
I made a model of the park when I was 12. I mean, come on. So, you know, we all wanted to give Europe the very best that we could because frankly, the interiors in Paris and Europe are pretty doggone amazing too.
Yeah.
Just to go get a tart, it's quite an experience. So we knew the bar was high, but everyone also believed in story. So we had conventions, and Tony, I believe, is the first person to say that, if it's not worth taking a photograph of, it's not worth building. And that's what I communicated to our team. I said, Europe already has moldings and draperies, and you're not going to impress people with finishes so much as you will with uniqueness and story. So the candy store, what's the American equivalent? Because Europe kind of owns candy, frankly, as far as coolness is concerned. Yeah, come on. You're going to go to Austria and outdo Demel for Tort. I mean, what are you going to do? So we had to take Atlantic City and saltwater taffy and make columns full of glass candies. I thought, let's do something that would surprise. Every interior is an opportunity, especially for the money we're spending.
Yeah.
Mailing it in is just making more moldings and wallpaper. That's it's just mailing it in. To me, Herb Ryman taught me, he's like, Eddie, bad taste costs no more. If you do the research, look at American history, dig something up that's quirky and human, that's really going to make the guest stop and go, what is this? This feels like my grandma's house. Victoria's Fine Home Cooking is like a little museum of kitsch. I mean, it's like, really soulful interior set decoration. So we tried to start with movies and set decoration and go backwards versus starting with slat wall, retail shelving, and all these rules they've come up with now where, oh yes, the theming only starts at 9 feet and everything else has a personal spotlight for it. And every store is identical. It just has different colors of molding on it or a different thing because it's a formulaic thing. By the way, the lack of sales in merchandise was blamed on the fact that the interiors were too good. They said, well, the interiors are too good. They're too distracting. People are enjoying them too much, and they can't find the merchandise.
We saw that recently too. World of Disney, when they toned down World of Disney, when they redid Mouse Gear as creations, like that was the edict, was the stores, there's too much theme, people are distracted.
Okay, but here's the crazy thing. I feel like they don't know, sometimes people don't understand why the guest comes and what the guest comes for. And I had experiences like this where someone would be newly hired in a management position, but they might be from New York. And they may not even be a Disney fan.
Yeah.
They're like, why are these people coming here and having this? This needs to be more like, the Four Seasons. And you're like, no, they can go to the Four Seasons. They're paying to come here. It's kind of like Walt Disney liked things that were kind of corny and déclassé, and it's like, yeah, but people kind of like that. They kind of like the hoop-de-doo review, okay? They want to come back. There's no shame here, and people are writing massive checks. So, this is the only place in the world where people will wear a Mickey Mouse hat. Go with it. Go with it. Let them enjoy it. Make it themed, make it immersive, make it fun. But allow people to write their own story too. Like an impressionist painting, let people see the light and shadow in the painting, but also let them enjoy it for what they want to have in it too. Don't get so parochial about it.
So people at home can dig all this up. Like you said before we started the interview, there's a lot of information out there. Especially the Disneyland Paris fandom is ravenous, right? Like they love all those details, and it's great. But I want to at least give people a snapshot to whet their appetite so maybe they'll go out there and research more on their own. Can we talk about like one or two interiors on Main Street? Is that all right with you?
Oh yeah.
All right. I want to talk about the barber shop, because I was forced to not shave for several days because I was told I had to go get a shave at the barber shop. It's one of my favorite Disney parks memories of my whole life, is that barbershop, because so much of it is, you talk about American history, so much of it is real. in that shop?
Okay, so to me, even the attraction posters I thought were trapped in the mid-century and didn't belong on Main Street. I kind of got rabid about it. So the Casey's poster, if you look at Casey's Corner,
Yeah.
you know, that's from a Spalding baseball guide of 1895 turned into a Disney poster. I wanted to use it as decor. I think Europeans are very used to what is legit and what isn't. And to make the barbershop, to me, was an opportunity to set decorate, not style, set decorate, and say, who lives in the space? I took classes in screenwriting and production design and stuff. And those are my teachers, were people that did that. So the idea is that you're going to use real boxing posters. You're going to use, they used to read the Police Gazette, the, girly magazines of the time. Well, I wanted to put those magazines in the store, have them there. So you walk in and go, wow, you could just get a haircut or you could dig deeper. Give people that option. Let's go buy a collection of real mustache mugs. The one interior that's not there anymore, so I don't want to get into it too deeply, is the camera George Lucas's interior in the park when he came to visit, because we had little vignette spaces that were locked off, like the office of the owner, that were filled with antiques, down to receipts for like the electric bill. I mean, that stuff was in there. You could see it. His glasses. And so when I went in, this is how crazy it was. So I went into this office, and maybe we can post some pictures from it. Went into the office, and we had a whole crew of art directors on board. But I wanted to do this myself and get very personal. Coming from Knott's, where you would look in the Western facades, I felt this is a chance for one of those kind of vignettes.
Yeah.
To be the guy. So it's like 2 a.m. I am the guy that runs it. And I put the antique glasses on. I try to write the bills. I try to even use the hand motions to put the papers in the roll top desk where they go. Mm-hmm. There's little cigar labels the guy would collect. And just try to, within my reach, place everything as the guy lived it. And then kind of like the Menlo Park Laboratory, where Henry Ford nails down Thomas Edison's chair the minute he gets up from his laboratory and walks out. I wanted to do that. I wanted to freeze time in the Disney universe and just set the glasses down, set the coffee cup down, the pen down, finish role playing, walk out and go, just lock the door. We're done. Yeah. So Deb Rager and Susan Cowan, we had a bunch of different art directors, Jody McLaughlin, we had a whole lot of different ones, Beth Ann Brody, to name a few. We're all involved in the field work. Certain things I just felt like placing the cans on the shelves of the market house. Yeah. I did that like 30 times, just to get the composition to look balanced. I mean, I just kind of went, matter of fact, every picture in Gibson Girl, Charles Dana Gibson, let's go to the Gibson Girl because at least it's still there. Yeah. Okay, Charles Dana Gibson was the highest paid illustrator in America at the time Main Street would have happened. He was the #1 illustrator. He created the personality in women in his cartoons of the woman playing hard to get, and really was credited with the beginnings of the suffragette movement of women's independence. So this was not a political statement. It was actually trying to bring art to Main Street. Mm-hmm. But his cartoons are very funny. The women in them are drawn very beautifully. And I tried to pick the very best cartoons. I went and bought all the books, went through them and razor bladed out all the best cartoons, had them reproduced, framed, and then put up in that restaurant. And if you go through and look at each cartoon, they're very, very witty. They're funny, and pretty dark, frankly. No one's ever looked that close at the two women by the doors with hatchets in their hands. So these two women with these beautiful Victorian dresses are looking at each other as if they're going to shake hands. But when you see their hands blended into the pen and ink, there's huge axes in their hands ready to chop each other to bits. But I thought that would be a nice thing for an ice cream parlor.
I've never been in there because every time I go, it's too cold for ice cream. Now I have to go in there now.
Well, I mean, the little details. I mean, there's the stories of the manhole covers. We went and we really wanted to put art into the park. I mean, in the early days of Main Street, before the 20s thing got canned, we wanted to build Edward Hopper's Nighthawk's Diner, pretty much where Walt's American Restaurant was. So you would look and you'd go, wow, that looks like an American painting. So Main Street could actually double for American paintings. We used Shoeless Joe Jackson, done by J.C. Leyendecker, as the billboard on Main Street. When you look up for that Coca-Cola billboard, we wanted to celebrate American illustrators. See, because it's not political. We don't have to get political or cause those kinds of divisive things. We can just call attention to art and invention, and even the inventions in the arcade are patent models, mostly submitted by immigrants, many women.
Wow.
I mean, this was 1992. We were doing all kinds of different things to really open the minds of the guests to a bigger picture of what American culture was. And it's the same amount of money as building something not researched that looks kind of janky. In the Disney dollar world, Disney's so expensive. A meeting is the budget of a restaurant. So, why not stay up a little later and work a little harder and come up with some research,
Yeah, absolutely. One store that blows my mind was the car shop. The car shop.
Oh, Main Street Motors.
Main Street Motors, yeah. That blows my mind that existed.
You can thank Neiman Marcus for that.
Oh, yeah? I don't think I've heard this story.
Yeah. Okay, well, then I won't tell it. Unless you want to hear it again. But
I haven't heard this story.
Okay, well, maybe you haven't. So, okay. So, in other words, if you're going to have to do retail and you're going to get stuck with designing retail stores, why not do outrageous retail? Something. And they wouldn't let us do the one-of-a-kind shop like from New Orleans Square at Disneyland, which was an antique store, or in Liberty Square, because no one wants to hire a buyer for that. There's no margin. It's just not Disney. They're just not the right company to do that. So I said, okay, how about this? Neiman Marcus Christmas catalog. Let's do real antique cars in a Disney retail store, and if you buy it, we'll open the two doors to that's why you have a garage on that store, by the way. We'll open the doors to the garage, and then the afternoon parade, you can be in the parade driving your car down the street. So Mickey Steinberg, thank goodness for him. He was the man who really got the park built. He goes, Eddie, I love that idea. And everybody else, they kind of love that. They kind of go, okay. I go, yeah. So we had a budget to buy 3 antique cars that were drivable, that could be for sale. And if somebody wants to buy it. But I said, Main Street needs to be the kind of place that if you look at a manhole cover, it's an antique from the Smithsonian, which they were. There's still a few of them are out there at Main Street. Or you can buy that antique car and drive Main Street right out of the park. That's what I guess I came from the insecurity of being criticized that Main Street's not even a land.
Yeah.
I said, well, why can't we make it a land? Why can't it be as good as a land? Why does it have to be a mall?
Yeah. Why
can't it be a land, something that really entertains people? For $150 million or whatever it costs to build Main Street, I don't know. Why can't it be rich? Certainly Paris is a land. It's a really good land, and why can't Main Street be a land? Why can't it be rich enough to qualify? So, and everybody on our team believed that. Everybody drank the Kool-Aid. Everybody I worked with, many came from the movies. There's a lot of stories about the movie Hello, Dolly and my influence and Tony's on Main Street. And that was a big influence in the design of Main Street. John DeCure Sr. was an art director that I'd met and looked up to my whole career, and so a lot of that richness, that epic feel, I felt like that's got to be there. We got to do that. So you kind of aim higher, even though you may not get there. You get a little better than, you're not going to just get slat wall and product, Yeah.
Well, I think the consensus is that is the best Main Street that's been built, because I think as a Disney fan, you want to spend time on Main Street, but there's there's not many compelling reasons to in the other parks, right? Like eating at Carnation Cafe, or whether it's Plaza Restaurant at Magic Kingdom or whatever, you have a little bit of that where it's great to have that experience, but there's no other reasons other than shopping to want to spend time in those spaces. And I feel like when we go to Paris, we spend a lot of time on Main Street because there's a lot of things to look at and a lot of spaces where you just want to take in the music and the atmosphere and people watch. And it's just a space you want to spend a lot of time in, which Main Street for a lot of people is not that, because it is, in some of the parks, it feels like it's just the land on the way to the fun, right?
Well, it's totally the land on the way to the fun. And Jim Cora, who was the senior executive at the time the park opened. On the operations side, he pretty much opened it.
Yeah.
He told me the opening month or so, he says, you know what the average amount of time guests spend on Main Street is? I go, in line or walking around? He goes, no, exploring Main Street. I go, no, he goes, 2 hours.
Wow.
He goes, Europeans are reading every single plaque in the Liberty Arcade. They're treating that like a museum experience, or the Liberty Arcade, or they're just,
Right.
sitting in the restaurants or the Plaza Gardens. And I feel like sometimes we talk down to the audience by assuming there's prejudice. Oh, people don't like stuff. That's old. We don't want Coca-Cola. We want something. We don't want that Coke corner. That makes us look antiquated. The trouble is, how antiquated is Game of Thrones? People are watching that.
Yeah.
I mean, in other words, if it's good, the time period is somewhat real. And if it's rich and it's interesting, or it's immersive or challenging or beautiful, Walt Disney he looked for the better nature in people and looking for, the good in them, and you don't push role. I'm not talking about pushing role playing on people. I'm talking about just letting people subconsciously experience richness,
Yeah. So no $6,000
and
Main Street
optimism.
hotel where we live on Main Street for 2 days. Not doing.
Oh, you know what? That's interesting. Okay. That is actually an interesting idea, is that I'll bet you, because people go to the Beverly Hills Hotel here in LA for high tea. I mean, it's amazing. Secret Cinema in London. I just went to that whole James Bond thing that they did a year or two ago. Where you have an evening inside of a film. I don't know that you have to stay overnight in it, but having the safety valve for the people that want it, kind of like some people play first-person shooters, and other people like to be in the world of Zelda forever, or Myst. They could just walk around Myst. There's different kinds of audiences. Having those little bits of depth, we tried to propose like a San Francisco earthquake attraction. Like a little bit of a trolley car thrill ride for Main Street once. And we tried lots of different ideas, none of which, because it's not a land, Sotto, It's not a land. Get it through your head. Maybe I'm going to make a pin that just says it's not a land.
We did get the cable car bake shop, though, which is amazing. I love that interior.
Well, you know what? Again, it's so hard. Michael Eisner, to his credit, goes, I want everything to feel American. I don't want anything European. I go, well, mansard roofs are hard to change, Michael. All the architecture is stolen from England and France.
Yeah.
I know, but you got to make it feel American. So that's why we did all the billboards, all the English. And so we just sat around and said, well, what's American about baking? I don't know that we have the best bread. Certainly we're in the country that has the best bread. How do you tell them that? We said, well, we do have sourdough bread. So let's do the cable cars. And Connie Holtz was a prop buyer, and she lived in San Francisco area. And she went and got everything from sections of cable car track to real blueprints of cable cars. That restaurant is like a museum of cable car history. So Tiffany lamps. We try to import what is American about ... Either it's bread, it's candy. If it's fine dining, you're not going to beat France for that. So you have Walt Disney. You can't argue with that, right? So plush. What's America plush? A county fair. That's why Disney and Company looks like a county fair. So the plush fits in. We said, what if the theming and the plush actually each other? Why fight it? Yeah. Let's just make a plush world and make it work for that. So we did our best. And we actually say a little shout out for the design director who brought us to opening day. His name was Bill Tyson. He just passed away from cancer, and he truly was a soldier, a smiler and a soul man with a grin on his face. Really struck the balance between getting us open and defending the design. And he was one of the people that I really, really trust, along with Ed Johnson and a few others, Sandy Malali and so many in the field. And many, some of them even worked on Hello Dolly. Some of the set designers from Hello Dolly drew Main Street. Did you know that?
I did not. That's fantastic.
You can go on YouTube, and there's a video I shot to to take to France to show them what WDI was doing. And you can see this video. Maybe you want to link to this at the end of the interview. You can go watch it. And you will meet the people of Main Street that were at WDI just the day before I left to go to France. And this heavyset gentleman there, Peter Kelly, he worked on Hello Dolly, gave me the blueprints to Harmonia Gardens.
Oh, wow.
And I want these people in our Main Street. I want the DNA.
Yeah.
Just like Walt used people from Fox, I wanted to use people from Fox and put them right there. And you can see him drawing the details for Town Square in front of you. I think it was in September of 1988 or 89 or something like that. And you'll meet a lot of the different Imagineers. Those are the real people that got it done. I'm a figurehead. I was a director. I do draw. I actually design things. But my goodness, where would I or any of us be without the all-nighters of all these other people that worked so hard and lent their talents? Sandy Mullally, you'll see this lady in there. She worked on Paint Your Wagon. She worked on films. So we had a lot of people from the film industry in our tight little group there.
That's great. And there is a lot of film inspiration, in particular in Main Street, right? A lot of those interiors, especially, I assume there's several movies they're inspired by.
Oh, absolutely. Now, there's a lot of Disney influence in this, where we named things after films like Summer Magic. I mean, the Harrington's Fine China, I think either comes from Summer Magic or Pollyanna. I think the Harrington family's from Pollyanna, if I remember correctly. But you can go to the boarding house. Go look at the boarding house and the names on there. One of them is the very first editor of the Disneyland newspaper in 1955. Jack Jungmeyer is in there. There's Robert Sherwood, who was the doctor who commissioned Walt to do his first drawing. So, I mean, I try to make it I'm a Disney fan. I want the deep dive. So I figured, why not give the Easter eggs? You know, why doesn't everybody get the Easter eggs? Let's, you know, it's easy to do that. Let's keep going with it. So a lot of those had that kind of cinematic influence for sure, you know?
So give us a snapshot. You're working on a single land. How many people from WDI, I mean, I'm sure there's tons of people outside of WDI working on it as well, but how many people from Imagineering are responsible for bringing that land to life from start to finish? Is it hundreds of people? How many people get their hands in the process?
Well, I would say, 86. How about that? People, It's so funny. The financial people always used to ask us how many were working on a project. I just said 86. I don't know. But it just worked for Maxwell Smart, so it works for me. So it's like, 86. Well, here's the difference. There's a nucleus of people. And by the way, we had a high turnover. Remember, when the 20s Main Street got canceled, we lost a year. So we were 1 year behind every other land in the park, and none of the deadlines moved. So all of the detail, a lot of it got cut or pushed off to later stages of design. So we had to kind of cram at the end of the project and fly people in to add detail in the last month, to add moldings to the buildings in the last month. That's how serious it got. So we had a core team, which was like engineers, interiors, mostly leads of all these different divisions, mixed in with operational people or Imagineering, like the merchandise representative or the foods representative. They're very critical. It's got to work. It has to do everything, right? And then it goes to other divisions like lighting design, themed lighting, fixture design. You'd have like 3 or 4 people. Graphics. We had 3 or 4 incredible hand lettering people doing hand lettering, no computer lettering. We wanted hand lettering for a graph. That blew the budget right there. So all of those things kind of contribute to this team size. And then of course you have a complement in Europe that's kind of taking those drawings and then transferring them into French architectural drawings that can be signed off and approved by European authority.
Yeah. So you talked about the last month. We're approaching the 30th anniversary. So right now we're at 30 years. We're 30 years from that period, that crunch time to bring the park to life. Can you tell us about that last month, those final days before the opening of the park? What are things like on the ground there?
Well, I was having a nervous breakdown about a month or two before. I thought I'd wasted 5 years because the details, they just weren't there. They kept pushing them off and pushing them off. Next package, next package. And Ed Johnson, who was the art director working with me, we would travel all over England with red Sharpie pens, marking up moldings, just trying to, bail the water out of the sorcerer's basement, so to speak, with brooms, trying to get all the design cleaned up. And then finally, I felt like, man, I saw things being built that didn't look like the drawings, or we couldn't even catch it. So I finally showed pictures to Frank Wells, who I had a relationship with. He was the president of the company, took me aside on a trailer and goes, "How's it really going?" I go, "You want to know? I'll show you." I had this Polaroid of a picture of a cabinet. I go, "Here's the cabinet in Florida. Here's the cabinet we're making." He goes, "Oh my gosh, it doesn't look anything alike." I go, "No." He goes, "Is that the only cabinet?" I go, "No, it's like all over the place." He goes, "What do we do? It has to be right." I mean, this is the kind of management we had. "Eddie, it has to be right. What do you need?" I'm like, wow.
That's amazing.
Well, you have to have an answer. I go, "How about if I take a yellow highlighter pen and I go through the downstairs first 15 feet of what a guest sees of the entire Main Street?" Because all those moldings have been stripped out of the drawings. They were never finished. He goes, "Yeah, but what's the rest?" I go, "Well, we can have architects come out here, and quickly I will spec moldings with the architects, and we will put panels of nice, beefy, rich moldings around the windows. I'll just quickly mark up the minimum we need to make this thing as rich as Florida and beautiful and fabulous. We won't do things that are 25 feet away. We're going to do the stuff that's at the close-up, the John Inch close-up. And we'll map over it." He goes, "You really think you can do that in time?" I go, "Yeah, if we have a mill shop here on site, we can cut the blades on site and do the moldings right here." So even Walt's, we couldn't get the Art Nouveau room done in that Discoveryland room in wood. So it was sculpted in clay on site in the merchandise warehouse and done in field. I did the drawings of all the Art Nouveau stuff myself there. And Ed Johnson oversaw that, but I did the originals of the fireplace. Some of the other things were made offsite, but the door casings, all that stuff was all last minute. The art directors, in order to get finished, somebody took all of our props in a cargo container. Right now we're about this time of the month, April, the first week of April, we had probably found the stuff. This cargo container of our props was taken outside of town.
Oh, boy.
Gone. So we didn't have the props to put in the buildings.
Yikes.
Because this whole cargo container was taken off site. So we had to go find the container, bring it back, and then get all the props. So anyway, so that's kind of what we had to do in order to make that work. So it was absolute craziness. A lot of people were sent home just to keep the show designers from going overboard, second guessing themselves, which I did, but so it was all painting it. Literally, Frank Wells and his wife, the night before opening, I was walking down the street, Main Street. It's like 2 a.m. and we're up there. I'm not in it, but there's a cherry picker and we're putting flowers in the upstairs window boxes, and I mean, we're all there. I mean, it's not like I don't go home. I mean, we work 14-hour days over 2 shifts.
Yeah.
And Frank Wells goes, "What are you guys doing here?" I go, "Well, we're finishing the park. There's nobody left to finish it. We're finishing the park. We're putting the light bulbs, there's all these crews here just trying to get those last minute things in." And I think we did really pretty good. There were wiring issues, as I recall, but pretty much everything was done. The effects projectors weren't plugged in some rides, and they needed some specific talent, but we kind of made it. Thanks to Mickey Steinberg, I can't, and guys like Tyson and others out there. We even had French talent that were our coordinators that rose to the occasion. When we couldn't get the glass candies into the columns, they invented, by taking a pantyhose and cutting a hole in the toe, ways of filling this pantyhose with glass candies and jiggling it so they don't break on their way down, and backfilling the columns. It took anything that you could do, and all the lands were that way.
That's amazing.
So,
But you guys made it. You made it to April 12th.
Well, I think the cast members, the real credit, frankly, is I think the DNA of not saying die and just getting there anyway,
Yeah.
no matter what, is really why the park is there. And I am the most grateful guy in the world, and I have to tell you why, because this park could have closed 100 times by now.
Yeah.
This park has been the Indiana Jones with his fingers on the cliff, with an economy stepping on each finger now for 30 years. But the Imagineers not giving up on the peeling paint, or having the patience to work with banks to get the budget to maintain it, or the cast members maybe, going that extra mile when there isn't new attractions and they're all going to the studio across the street, okay, when they don't have all that new stuff. Thank goodness the environment was rich enough for people to want to come back and appreciate that, because they didn't have the budget for the ride. So I feel like in hindsight, it kind of worked out that yes, we were blamed for overboard when we came home, but that overboard kept the ship afloat, because the park, at least the Europeans, appreciated that. And they went back because it's a beautiful place with that richness.
Yeah.
And the cast members and the Imagineers stuck it out and didn't quit, and, had to put their hand up like this when the riverboat's falling apart. And I mean, my heart was broken 100 times on that park. But look at where we are. Bob Iger. Thank you, Bob Iger, for buying the park back.
Yeah, I mean, I know I didn't get to see those bad years, but I've heard the stories, and people just, everyone that's a local out there has talked about how much work has been done the last 4 or 5 years alone, restoring Pirates and Phantom Manor and the rivers and just the whole park. It looks great. It's 30 years later, it's still all, because of that rich detail, I think it's timeless. I think everything that is there is timeless because it was done so right 30 years ago.
And really, when you think about it, see, Imagineers, everybody, I get interviewed and we talk about how cool everything is. But the people in show quality, and I worked with show quality at Disneyland with Kim Irvine down there, they make it happen. If there isn't budget, they went out and repainted the dinosaurs like on weekends themselves. I mean, people go out and do wonderful things and make that extra little thing we all appreciate. And a lot of it is those on the ground. It's those on the ground that are there every single day. So Eve, who just, I believe, retired, or Tracy Eck, there's a variety of different ones. Peggy Ferris was leading it for a while, people I've known for years. It was never an easy job. And I would visit every now and then and come see the park. Sometimes you got to cringe a little bit in some areas. Other times they did what they could, or Tom Fitzgerald, and I believe he pushed to get Main Street restored for the anniversary. So, everyone does their part. And I think the best thing we can do as, I'm a customer now, is just, give them some room, give them some time to get through hard times or economic issues. And we're not going to love every single thing that happens. I understand the camera store is gone. It's my favorite thing. Would I like to see it turn into something else? Yes. Pardon?
There was nothing left to sell in the camera store, right? There was no one.
That's
no
the
one was
thing.
using
But the funny
film.
thing about Main Street, I know, but they didn't get rid of the horses when cars came either. We still have horse-drawn streetcars. You don't get Main Street's about what isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
It's a way to look back at the way the world was. So, is there a way to maybe do something with it? Yeah, maybe if it was in a location that wasn't so prime, they would have kept it. But that's a very, very prime location. So, I understand. I'm not, I'm not pointing my finger and shaking. I think everybody does the very best they can with. Well, and I love the logo that they did for the 30th. I think it's a very beautiful, elegant logo. I just love the way I love the idea they serve champagne. You can have a glass of champagne at sunset and look at the castle. I mean, that was my favorite moment. I went in 2019 to Walt's, and it was actually open. I wish the train was open more.
Train operates all the time now. The train's back full time again.
Well,
pretty
I love
great.
that.
It's wonderful.
We worked so hard on that train, and it's got so much detail and so much to enjoy about it. Is there, but look, the Tony's genius was having the Grand Canyon reveal Big Thunder. Nobody talks about this.
Yeah.
You get on if you go to Disneyland Paris, you get on the train, you see this beautiful Grand Canyon, and then the diorama becomes real because there's this tree dissolve, and then pow, there's the island and you can ride on it.
Yeah.
I thought that was so extraordinary. And remember, he's just shuffling the deck, man.
Yeah.
You know, look how he milked Big Thunders. Oh, hey, let's take Big Thunder and put it on an island.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have the budget, did you know that Disneyland Paris had the lowest cost per guest carried in a new park? People said, "Oh, it's irresponsible, it's out of control," all this, fake Disney news. No, the lowest cost per guest carried in a park. That's because there was so much thought. He put a lot of thought with all the team leaders, and you have great Disney fans and every designer, Chris and Jeff and Tim. Each one has a strength that helps their land, especially Tom Morris. And Tony left avenues for you to grow in that park. They just haven't used them all yet. Yeah. Left openings. It's not all sewn up like Florida with Small World blocking the back, or Hong Kong with Space Mountain in the wrong spot, So it's a great park. It's got a great future. Let's just see what they do.
But like you said, built by fans for fans, and I think that's how we feel when we go to Paris. It is all the classic quintessential things we love: Pirates, Mansion, the Castle, Peter Pan. All of those things are there, but they're done in this perfected grand form. At least feels like comparatively to all the versions that had come before. So like Paris, there isn't, like I tell people, there's not 100 attractions to do in that park, but every single one of them almost is the best version of that attraction or that land that's been done to date.
Well, I mean, every prisoner has a right to escape. You're supposed to try your best. And for me, it was little things I remembered as a boy, like the upstairs windows at Nature's Wonderland, hearing the dentist and all those things. That made those upstairs real to me. I thought, you know what? It's not going to cost us a lot of money. We already have a big audio budget. Let's throw a few speakers, from the parade over there, and let's just record some fun voices. Let's also have fun you don't have to wait in line for. Let's not get nickeled and dimed. Let somebody have an ice cream cone and have something unexpected happen. And I think that's one of the things that, because Disney is, with the apps and everything, is so much about processing us. Yeah. Where is serendipity gone? Where's just sitting with an ice cream cone and hearing somebody in agony have their teeth ripped out? Now that is a nice experience, we gotta get back to those little things that people go, yeah, that could only be, at Disneyland. It's only possible at Disneyland. So we always asked ourselves, what would I want, and I think every producer thought that way in their own way. Chris Teets and Tim Delaney and Tom and all of them. Tom's very much of a jeweler. He gets in there and thinks about the silhouette of the castle. We all cared, Yeah.
If I may, I want to end on it's serendipitous. Today is actually the soft reopening of Walt's restaurant is today. Official reopening on the 12th. And that is and that is by far. I've already got my reservation for the 12th. I'm very excited.
Oh,
very excited. And that is bar none. And it's not because I'm interviewing you. I've said this on Twitter. I've said this in a million places. That is my favorite interior I've ever been in. I've been to all the Club 33s. None of that feels as special as Walt's does as a lifelong fan, because it is that celebration of the art that created the park and the people that made the park. And there are these incredible thematic rooms. That Discoveryland room, I want to rebuild that in my home, because that fireplace is my favorite thing with the Nautilus above. It's glorious. Tell me, if you can, walk me through Walt's a little bit. And don't worry, I've got 400, 500 photos of this place already, so don't worry about it. We'll show people at home, but please walk us through Walt's if you can.
It's the place that Sharon Disney toured and said that her dad would be proud of. I said, look, the whole point of this restaurant, there's a point, and by the way, this is when you didn't have a gift shop downstairs. So the lower dining rooms were the story of Walt's beginnings in Main Street. If you're a European, I mean, like, why is this thing here? Marceline, Missouri, his love of trains. We had models of Main Street. The models of the Main Street buildings were there. And also Walt's fascination with Europe, how he went to Europe and he brought back things for Disneyland from Europe. So we wanted to tell that story. The animatronic bird, it's not the bird, but it's a bird that inspired animatronics, is there with the piano. The clock, if they wind it up, plays When You Wish Upon a Star. The clock. The initials from Walt's apartment in New Orleans Square that are on the balcony there, that is the secret Easter egg in the restaurant. So the gas lights on the ground floor all have the WD on the gas keys. The WD is actually embedded in a sofa. If it's there, you'll see the sofa there. Even they used to put your name, I think they might still do this, on a card and then take your name upstairs, so they'll call you by name by the time you get up the elevator.
Yeah.
I wanted Club 33 on crack for those who couldn't afford it, because
It's better
one of
than
the
Club
things that-
33, so it's
well, that was the goal. Why can't everybody get to see the parade from on a rainy day? Talk about weatherizing from a beautiful private dining room. Why can't everybody go to Club 33? As a little kid, I didn't know anybody at Disney. I wished I could have went. I had the brochure they mailed me, and I dreamed of going to that place, and it was very grown up. It wasn't cutesy, and I thought, well, let's do a grown up environment. And the operations came in and goes, you can't do these themed rooms. That's not Victorian. I go, what do you mean it's not Victorian? You can't have an Arab room. You can't have an Arabic room. That looks like the Arabian Nights in there. That's Adventureland, Eddie. That's not Main Street. I go, here's research books that show New York mansions where people that didn't travel would decorate in Victorian style rooms to look like different cultures. That was very popular. These parlors that were Chinese, that's where the decorative arts came from, or for, all these various things. And then they went, oh, okay, you can do it. So we said, no, when Walt Disney's dream gets built, the upstairs is all about the making of dreams, from Disneyland to Disneyland Paris. The Art Nouveau, that Art Nouveau fireplace. Did you know that the submarine was built by Tom Sherman, who was the #1 Nautilus fanatic of all time, who actually worked in the attraction and was the head design consultant for the one in Discoveryland? He built models. And so we asked him to build a model that looked like what Harper Goff would have held. And he built a Nautilus model by hand. And that is it's a monument to him in that fireplace. So that is a Tom Sherman original in the fireplace. So, and he's the guy who took his apartment and built a Nautilus in a rented apartment, much to the landlord's chagrin. Go look him up, and you'll find some interesting things on Tom. But that whole restaurant, there's a lot of Easter eggs in there, I think, for you to find. I think there's an Oscar in there. There might hopefully still be an Oscar in there. But we really tried to make it Club 33 for everybody. I mean, the whole idea that every guest is a VIP, very individual person. I don't know if we still have that with the lightning lanes and all these things going on where, I don't know that the haves should always see the have-nots, coming in. So it's good to have a Club 33. I've done work for Club 33. I still work for them. So I'm a big fan of Club 33.
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is that at the time in 1992, I thought, well, why not create an experience? And by the way, those people that experience Waltz have no idea that even there is a Club 33. So, they just like to look out the window. And I thought, let's just make let's give it to the guest. Why can't we give it to the guest? Anyway, that was a little bit of the elevator is definitely the lift from that. I have pictures, I think, on Twitter of getting the elevator through the door, the day the elevator arrived in the dirt, and trying to put that into the building. It was so fun. I have to tell you, watching that restaurant come together was, an incredible experience.
Yeah,
I hope you enjoy it, and I think the food is fantastic now.
Yeah, the new menu looks great. It's way more affordable now, too. Way lower price point than it used to be. Way lower.
Well, they're doing. We also had the menu. I think it still has the story in it. We put the story in a photo album, so people would get the idea. The idea is Walt is a human, not just a company. So people in Europe could see that he's a person. So Walt's restaurant's meant to be a very personal thing. Parks get built by people. There's models, there's drawings. These things don't come out of computers. They're made by people. Walt Disney has a team. I mean, that was the whole idea. 1401 is the address, of course, which is the original address of Walt Disney Imagineering, or WED. So, we did everything we could to celebrate that and let the guests, experience it in Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it's just like an educational process to Europe. And I think Sharon appreciated that. She really appreciated that aspect of it, that we were trying to humanize her dad.
Yeah, I think especially for those of us who haven't lived in the, time frame in which he was alive, I think it's important to have that connection, right? Because people just see Disney, and it is for a lot of people now. It's a name, especially now as opposed to 1992. It's much more associated with just the name of this big corporation as opposed to associated with the actual human being who created it all, right?
Yeah. I mean, they do a lot of great things on Disney Plus, Imagineering Story. There's like so many things out there that do bring the human side into it, and Walt Disney's things into it. So I think it's all good. But anyway, that was the motivation for the restaurant. That's kind of, that's why it's the core statement of, if Main Street was a land, it would be a land about story. Mm-hmm. It's totally a land about story, about the American cultural story, the story of invention leading to Discoveryland, the story of the Statue of Liberty being from people, not governments. It's basically done by donations, is from artists. It's a cultural statement from artists. And then you look at all the different little shops and stores, and what they kind of bring to. We did inventors in the Emporium instead of presidents or anything political. We wanted to show different inventors and people that came to America and tried to do, something unique and bring their ideas. So that's what it's about. I have to say that at the end of it, I felt very honored to have the opportunity to, at the end of it, I didn't feel like I presided over a photocopier. I would have loved to do more facades. I would have loved to erode a few more, take a few more and change them around a little bit.
Yeah.
But
you got to do a little bit of that, right? There's a couple of San Francisco-ish facades, right?
That's right. We have a San Francisco street.
Yeah.
See, San Francisco was the #1 tourist attraction, as far as cultural in America. So we thought, well, we got to show some San Francisco. So that's why we did Market Street with the Marketplace arcade. And again, that arcade, when you get to the end of it, was supposed to have food carts and stuff and kind of blow out into a larger open area. But those doors have never opened really into anything. That's a great place to expand. So when you go there, there's so many little hidden things like the windows. And if you're at Casey's, look up at one of the facades, you'll see baseballs and home plates and baseball bats embedded in the facade. Or the two gentlemen who wrote, Von Tilzer and something, who wrote the Take Me Out to the Ball Game, got a window. A lot of people got windows on Main Street for cultural reasons, not just Disney reasons. The Wright brothers, are celebrated, things like that. Just, fun stuff. I went to Greenfield Village and wanted to make Main Street more like Greenfield Village, which is more of a living museum. I felt Europeans would like that more than a mall, strictly a shopping experience,
As opposed to Tokyo, where they very much wanted the mall.
But the funny thing with Tokyo is, to that, everything is an audience.
Yeah.
Europeans are not the same buying audience that the Japanese are. I'm glad you brought this up. The candy store is an attraction in Tokyo because of omiyage and people buying gifts. So the Japanese would hate you if you didn't do a mall. Yeah. Bon Voyage, the mall after the mall, did even better than the World Bazaar. That place printed money out of the railroad station. So to that audience, shopping is a fabulous experience, and they wouldn't want it any other way. Yeah. So I feel like Europe is less about consumerism and more about culture. On Sundays, they go to museums and parks, and that you feel guilty if you don't take your kid out for something cultural at some point. So what a nice surprise to arrive at a theme park and learn something before you get to the rides, or feel like it's more than that, not a carnival. So anyway, that was our insecurity going in. So I guess we went a little overboard.
But yeah, I think it's a good snapshot on differences between Parisian and Japanese culture. Is just look at World Bazaar versus Main Street at Disneyland Paris. It's a good, it's a decent start on understanding the differences in culture.
Well, Europeans are just not the T-shirt souvenir buyers
No.
to the level Americans are.
No.
Japanese culturally love to bring gifts back to each other, so they have to buy normally it's candy, but they also love snacks. I mean, the Winnie the Pooh popcorn was like $11 20 years ago outside of that ride. I couldn't believe it, and there was a line. There's a line for everything. So that's the whole thing. All this stuff, Main Street, all of it, it's all geared to the audience. You're all there to, as Herb was told by Mr. Disney, do something people will like. Well, if you don't know the people, you don't know what they're going to like.
Yeah.
So it's all about you guys on your network and the fans and people who come. You don't want to get too elitist and well, I don't mean elitist in that way. I just sort of mean you don't want to get too far away from your audience. You don't want to sit in LA and think you know what people who come to Disney parks only like. You want to go and wait. I always like to wait in the line with the people at Disneyland. I'm a fan, so I like waiting in line. I like the pre-show. But I also want to see who's on their phone. I want to know who's bored.
Yeah.
Do your own focus group. It's actually more valuable.
Absolutely.
It's more honest, I'll say that, if you stand in line.
Yeah. And that's how you figure out what people need, right? I mean, I think nearly every Imagineer we've spoken to in an interview, that's always what they say is like, how could you know what you have to design if you don't go out there and see how people are reacting to things?
It's true. Like the music of Main Street was chosen by sitting on a bench with a CD player back in those days and listening to music that was either faster or slower than the horses or the people walking down the street to make sure the music wouldn't be too conscious. There would be a little more unconscious, yet kind of set a tempo. So you had to match the tempo of the music to the people walking down the street, to the guests. That's what I'm talking about. There's a reason Walt had an apartment in his park. He wasn't too far from the product. I guess that's my main point, is that you want to stay close to the product as an Imagineer. Most Imagineers do, and they love the product, so they are at it. And I think that's the recipe for success. And it's hard to know if you've never built a park in there, because how are you going to know the product? How do you know Europeans? So we went on trips there to Paris and Europe and tried to observe the best we could, try to go to theme parks in the region. Tony especially, we went to Tivoli Gardens together. We ended up with Roger Rabbit as a ride system out of that versus Rides for Disneyland Paris, but
so the spinning vehicle.
There was Tony and I went on a ride that was a spinning bucket. And he's like, this is really cool. That goes for a ride. And that was sort of an inspiration, I would say, for Roger Rabbit. Yeah, he brought that back to Jolene Cicero and the other Imagineers and Dave Burkhart at Disneyland. Yeah. So.
Very cool.
But I can't believe this park is still around after 30 years. And I'm lucky to be here, frankly. Yeah. or have anyone interested in talking about it. Let's just put it that way. I'm honored that you even want to ask these questions.
Oh, so absolutely. I think I think there's such an emotional investment in this park, more so maybe than many of the other ones, because it had such a tumultuous beginning and then even a middle and a little longer than that, where there were, like, I remember like the newspaper article that said that Eisner came out and said there's a chance that this park may close. This could be the first Disney park to close. Now, whether or not he was pressuring, creditors or anything, we can dive into that. But the fact is that it's been a hard road to this point, and it is this. Anyone that's been there knows it's this beautiful piece of art that represents this thing we love. If you love theme entertainment and Disney parks, it is one of the most beautiful, shining examples of that. So it's emotional to reach its 30th anniversary because it's the park, I think, by far that has worked the hardest to get to this point.
That perfect summarization of this. It's the park that worked the hardest. The fans had to work hard and get their wallet maybe a year they didn't want to. The Imagineers are sitting there going, how do we glue this peeling paint back to Mark Twain? I mean, whatever it is they're doing, right? All of these things are going on at once, but people intrinsically, I hope, really appreciate it. I feel like it's like a great chef, when you sell the restaurant and you keep the menu the same, you can always tell if the chef changed. It's like the soul isn't there anymore, And so I think the park does still have that soul. And I think hopefully that's that soul, that engine is what has kept it there. And the investment that Michael and Frank made at the beginning, I don't think it was truly lost. I really don't.
No, absolutely.
And I got beat up, and all the designers, we were the pariah of the company when we came back. Then it didn't do well. It's like, well, it's almost like, Tom said in the Imagineering story, there was a time when, theme design, or we're not going to do that again.
Yeah.
Well, and if you look at California Adventure was a response to that.
Yeah.
Right. Now, did that work out? No. But remember too, Disneyland Paris, you had a train that was bringing most of the employees out there with nowhere to live. How do you pay people? And how do you have a third shift when the train closes? I mean, there's lots and lots of answers to why the park has had issues. It's a complicated question. To me, the park has always been creatively successful and creatively popular. But Walt Disney World didn't have that many hotels when it opened. Look how it struggled its first year or so to barely even justify itself. I mean, I've been listening to all those episodes about the history of it, and I'm shocked, So on the curve, it's not too bad.
Yeah, that's fair. Any other final thoughts coming up on the 30th anniversary about this park or your work on it?
I don't know. I feel incredibly blessed to even have had Main Street. I'm also very thankful to Tony Baxter, who hired me out of another company. I didn't have to start in the model shop or anything else, but Tony Baxter brought me into this company, believed in me, and I think I was turning out good work. I mean, I don't think it was a reason to not, but he trusted me to go from about $1.5 million job with Six Flags as far as the construction cost to like 100+ thing, and at kind of a vice president level. It wasn't just producer, it was like designer, executive designer, producer. So you're coming in and very intimidating. I remember walking through the halls, and seeing all this fabulous art and all this stuff and going, looking at my badge and going, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? I even went into an executive's, I will leave him nameless, executive's office and said, I don't know why people are going to come to this land or Main Street. I still don't know. Where's Yoda? I need to know why they come. Where's Yoda? Who's going to teach me like the Colonel's herbs and spices here to understand why I'm designing it, not just what I'm doing. I always look for that, the emotion. What is the why, And and the person leans forward and goes, that's what we hired you for. Get out there and do it, And so this is what led to Herb Ryman and getting Herb Ryman. I was looking for great illustrators. Everybody was busy. And said, well, to Marty Scars, I'm having trouble finding people and so forth. And, he says, well, Herb Ryman's retired, but he'll never work for you because, I don't know, he's hard to control. He's retired. He'll do what he wants to do. He's going to leave for lunch and all this. You'll never get anything out of him. He likes to tell stories and go to lunch. And I'm like, I like to listen to stories and go to lunch. I'll have a drink or two. Okay, great. So Herb had some deal with the company. I don't think I got charged for it. Mm-hmm. And oh my goodness, it was the experience of my life working with Herb Ryman, who taught me the DNA of why people love it, about what and how Walt told him, hey, just do something people will like. Make sure it resonates. Eddie, don't copy the copy. Get a research book out. Look at 19th century design. Dive into it. Immerse yourself in it. Because when I worked for MGM doing films, I wasn't satisfied, drawing Chinese movie sets without going to China. I quit the company to go to China to look at the real China, to come back and do the good Earth. I knew I would bring something. Why don't you bring something personal to it? Mm-hmm. So I said, he goes, well, who's your favorite art director? I go, well, John DeCure Sr. He goes, you know John DeCure Sr.? I go, well, I've met him. Yeah, he did Hello Dolly, my favorite set of all time. I went there as a kid at age 10. I was blown away. He goes, oh, that's your favorite artist, huh? And maybe he was expecting me to say Herb Ryman. And so he goes, I was his teacher at Chenard Art School.
Oh, wow.
He was my star student. And I said, oh my goodness, how does the world line up in such a way that not only I got to meet this person I admired and spent a little time with him, and obviously study him. But I ended up working with his teacher.
It's amazing.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So I guess in life it's yours to lose. You end up meeting a lot of very great people that have great insight, and if you don't take advantage of it or try, so I guess we're all just enjoying it now. So, but thank you for your interest in the project, and thank you for reaching out to me. I mean, considering it's not a land or anything,
I mean, I have a mug on my desk that has that hotel. I mean,
I
love that hotel, man.
I was jealously eyeing that. I have a mug that has the Main Street Railroad station on it.
Oh, that's cool.
From
I don't have
Disneyland,
that.
but I don't have I don't know if they ever made any. Maybe I'm going to have to order one of those online.
I would say I'd pick you up one, but they're closed the hotel, so I can't.
Well, I'm sure those will be on the secondary market, but I think I need to slow down my coffee cup consumption anyway. I've got the too many coffee cups from too many souvenirs. So anyway, but thank you to your audience too. This has been a very long paragraph. So
no, I mean that we love these places, and it is such an honor to hear the stories behind them from the people that help bring them to life. It's such a special place, so it's so amazing right at the 30th anniversary to be able to talk about how it all came together.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Sure, my pleasure.